Good morning.
Morning.
Looking around. Hello. See you folks. Folks online, in the room, on the earth, probably of the earth, maybe just the earth. Seems like we're not the earth, but I think that's just a weird habit of mine. So I hope you're enjoying being the earth today. And if you're not, I'm glad you're here, because the whole idea of having a Zen center is that people suffer and we can come together and we can heal. So good to be here with you. So today I'm going to talk about Jizō Bodhisattva. I'm realizing that there's a fan on in here, so I'm pretty used to gauging how to project my voice, but if you are not hearing me, please just put your hand up by your ear and I will speak a little louder. So Jizō Bodhisattva, the original Indian name for this figure is Kshitigarbha, K-S, Kshitigarbha, and which means earth womb or earth embryo. So a being that is deeply connected to generation, to nurturing, to coming forth to the earth. Sometimes translators will translate Kshitigarbha as earth matrix. Seems strange. I haven't been able to find exactly how they come to that. For those of you who have been paying attention to the Sanskrit around here, Tathagata, which means sort of the womb or embryo of Buddha or thusness, means the womb of the Buddha or the embryo of the Buddha. Here, interesting, the word garbha does not distinguish between womb and embryo. So we have Jizōs around here. So if you use the first floor bathroom today, you walk past Jizō. If you're someone who likes to engage in Buddhist ritual, you may have bowed to Jizō. You may have not known you were bowing to Jizō. There's an altar here. It's very common in a Zen temple to bow to the altar before and after you use the restroom, although that's certainly not necessary. But you may see people do it. Jizō is there. Jizō is also on the third floor altar in the classroom where the kids are right now. We have a really big Buddha that someone very generously donated, and a beautiful stone Jizō, and also a Connelly on that altar. And Jizō is often depicted in the earlier forms with two implements, a staff and a jewel. The jewel is the Mani jewel, which is a very ancient symbol, predating Buddhism, but common in Buddhism for a jewel which bestows wishes. So like in early Buddhist texts, there's this idea that a great king will have a jewel, the Mani jewel, which can bestow good things on the people. One of the things I will note is they're quite clear that if you have the Mani jewel, you actually have to give all the stuff away. That's how it works. That's how it works. So anyway, Jizō has this jewel for just receiving and transmitting benefit. And Jizō has a staff, which often is depicted. Oh, we also have a Jizō garden out here. The Cynthia Riggs Memorial Grieving Garden has a Jizō out there in the backyard, which is, I may talk a little bit more about Jizō's role in rituals around dying later. Although when I prepared this talk, I wrote the notes and I said, do I have enough material for the talk? And then I looked at it again. I thought, well, this is about 3 hours worth. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, that staff is often depicted with a set of loops on the end on which rings hang. And those rings have keys which enable, there's 6 keys which enable Jizō to enter the 6 realms to benefit any kind of being. So Jizō goes to hell. Jizō goes to where the hungry ghosts live, to the animal realm, to the human realm, to the realm of fighting titans, and to the realm of gods, with no fear. And it just has these keys to get there. So Jizō is associated with when times are tough. So although Jizō has a ring to get into the God realm, you don't hear about him going there that much. Really particularly associated with the willingness to go to hell, to be kind, to help people engage in their liberation practices. And you know, the hell realms, the 6 realms are, in my understanding, the vast majority of Buddhists in human history have thought the 6 realms are places that you actually will go after you die at some point. Human beings transmigrate through countless lifetimes, and they go to hell. They go to a place where there's infinite, unsatisfiable hunger, the hungry ghost realm. They become animals, all different kinds of animals, snakes, dogs. You can dream. Dogs. Anyway, I certainly know some dogs who live with people. I would rather be that person's dog than anything else. Dogs, rats, chickens, pigs, birds. The human realm, hey, that's where we're at. The fighting titan realm, which is a realm of great power and competition. And the God realm is a place of great comfort, ease, and complacency. So anyway, it is my understanding that the vast majority of Buddhists in human history, and it probably including now, believe these are real places that you can go. Maybe not. I don't know the details. But generally speaking, a lot of what I would call modernist Buddhists and postmodernist Buddhists understand these to be, you know, represent psychological states and kinds of experience and kinds of people and kinds of beings, so that we can understand that we have the capacity to serve and help people no matter what kind of realm they're living in. That's really underlying this. So another thing about Jizō is understood in Buddhist cosmology to have made a vow to stay, to forestall his entering of nirvana and stay with people who are suffering between the time when Shakyamuni Buddha, who's what we consider the historical Buddha, was alive, and the coming of Maitreya, which would be the next Buddha, the Buddha of compassion. So again, another thing where he's like, I am willing to stay where it's hard. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. I found this little poem about Jizō. Gives you a little sense. So the other day I was in the back and I saw a chipmunk sitting on Buddha's head right by the back door. Not the first time. But this poem says, the stone image of Jizō kissed on the mouth by a slug. And that's just very, you know, it's not hard for me to imagine walking into the Jizō garden and seeing a slug in Jizō's mouth. But maybe we understand that this is about Jizō's willingness to meet anything. When I get a slug on me, I'm a, you know, if it's not too proximate to my mouth, I might gently remove it. Right by my mouth, the startle response may supersede my capacity for mindfulness and compassion, sadly. So Jizō, like all bodhisattvas, represents both a vast, unimaginable amount of power that is supporting you and is there to take care of you when you suffer, and represents your own capacity to manifest that very thing. They're all about it. But in particular, Jizō is there to remind us that when things are horrible, when our desire feels insatiable, when we feel completely trapped, despairing, enraged, when we feel really complacent and we're like, everything's fine, why would I bother to practice? Jizō is there saying, because There are all kinds of beings. You will not be in this place forever. So practice will always matter. So there to support you and there to inspire you. Both sides. The distinction between whether Jizō is an intercessionary deity that comes to save you or whether you are Jizō is an illusion. Like all distinctions in the most ultimate sense. But illusions are pretty handy. I'm enjoying the illusion. A cup of water. And I enjoy the illusion that we're separate because it gives me the opportunity to try and understand you as a distinct person. Understand how I can be in relationship to you in a way that's beneficial. So the next I have like the way my notes work is I have a little heading and then a few little things. So the next heading says, knowing when we can go to hell. And this seemed to make a lot of sense when I first wrote it. And then I thought, that sounds a little weird. Maybe knowing when we have the capacity to go where it's really hard. Because we don't always have the capacity. We don't. Personally, like, I had no awareness of my trauma history until I was 32 years old. I did not have the capacity to meet it. It took a lot of work to even get to the level of emotional and embodied stability to be able to face what that was. And that's not uncommon. I'm just telling you this is like a particular experience, not uncommon. Also, sometimes you might be like, well, there's a really difficult thing happening in the community. I need to show up. And sometimes you might be like, I've been showing up for 6 months and now I need to go to a cabin and look at a tree for 3 days without doing anything else. Yeah, because we have the capacity that we actually have. So even though Jizō represents this utter willingness to go no matter how hard it is, and you have that capacity, it's also true that you have the capacity that you have right now. So, you know, people experience hellish states all over the world. People are completely in the pit of addiction right now. People are in horrible abusive relationships. In October, there was just a brutal attack on people in Israel. People in Gaza are in utter crisis now, Southern Sudan. The list goes on and on. These are just actual parts of our world. And learning that we can learn to actually turn towards the suffering and care is actually a big deal. And then from that caring, take next steps, which are actually doing something which helps. It's possible. People are doing it. Lots of people are doing it. You may be doing it. All these hells and these realms in Buddhist, from the Buddhist perspective, are made by the way we act. That's how it works. It is action, which can be translated into the word karma, that makes the 6 realms. And we do that together. That's the idea. We can do things that are conducive to liberation, that are conducive to well-being, that are conducive to kindness and compassion and peace and nonviolence and faith. And we can do things that are conducive to harm and violence and unkindness and desire. We have a choice together. This is sadly the good news of Buddhism. It's not so sad, but sometimes a little hard. I do occasionally wish I had a religion that said someone else is taking care of it. So I think I'd like to do just a little meditation practice related to knowing when we can go to hell. That is to say, knowing when you have the capacity to meet profound suffering. So you can do whatever you like to practice meditation. Some people kind of like to kind of arrange your body in a particular way. I certainly wouldn't. I find this can be helpful. Finding, in particular, energy, length, openness, and expansion along the spine. So letting the body open. The posture that we bring to Zazen is intended to be relieving tension by decompressing the body. And that's practice will involve a little visualization, so you can close your eyes if you like. Just letting the attention rest in the body, just noticing sensations in the body. There's an emotion present, you could just name it, or name with a word or two, not describe it so much, just give it a name. And if you feel sort of calm and stable and centered, as many people in this room may do, since we just practice meditation and are here together, just kind of notice and bring your attention to that sense of stability, calm, presence. And if you do not, just imagine that you were noticing calm, attention to the phenomena of the present moment, stability and groundedness of body, energy. Now see if you can just keep this sense of an imagined or a immediately present stability, calm, and awareness. And imagine a very difficult thing matters to you, but you want to avoid or tend to avoid. And just imagine yourself choosing to go and face this thing, but still having the stability of body, concentrated awareness, calm. If you can't imagine that, that's okay. Just notice what happens. And for some people, sort of sustaining this kind of imagination feels really hard or stressful. So if that's true, you can just let the awareness rest in the body, in the breath, in the body. Or if you just want to stay with this imagination for a few more for a minute more, you're welcome to do that. Let's let go of all of the imagining and just notice the points of contact with the ground. The physical sensations of contact with the earth. From the contact with the earth, see if you can draw energy along the spine and lift, open, expand. Feel free to wiggle the body a little bit as you open. Opening the eyes. You just feel free to move in whatever way feels good. Adjust your posture. Shift your. If that feels good. So I recently was we hosted an event for the Minnesota Multi-Faith Network, which I'm quite involved in. And we hosted a gathering of clergy leaders at a Native American church in Phillips neighborhood. And the pastor there was really going through some very difficult times. There were people pimping and selling drugs on their property, physically threatening the people who were working there because they were impeding their ability to do business. And it was just, I'm keeping it pretty brief, but I thought we were going there to organize a meeting, and we spent our time just talking about this particular pretty hellish place or and it's vivid to me that we're in this beautiful building on a lakefront property in a beautiful neighborhood, half mile from the site of Hawate Atunye, which is a Dakota village, on land that was forcibly and through enormous amounts of lying and swindling taken from the indigenous people of this area. And the impacts of that are very vivid now. So this is going back to this phenomenon that we collectively make the world we live in. And I could be like, well, I didn't do that. That was like, 100 years ago that the land was taken, but we're still in it. Just as Jizō Bodhisattva is supporting me, and I am the energy of Jizō Bodhisattva, the past and the present are immediately here in my life. And so this can be such a great reminder that we don't have to keep doing the same thing. That's the point of Buddhism. We are habituated, and we don't just have to keep doing the same thing. So, there's no easy fix for the impacts of all the trauma of the theft of this land. But if we keep remembering that it's actually there and part of our lives, it does change how we interact with the environment. instead of being like, oh, they're just some poor people, but they should go to work, or whatever. You realize that how did people get poor? How did that happen? And I will say that experience of visiting there was an experience of profound connection. It was a lot of healing. It was very beautiful. It's very beautiful. And a lot of people came and were like, oh, this is a place where we can try and provide some support. So Jizō is really popular in Japan. Popular, you see, Chichigarba is the name that's used, and then all different languages will translate it differently. So I've been to many Vietnamese temples where they'll have Chichigarbas. And, the idea is really you often have like a shrine to different types of bodhisattvas. And if you have a different concern, you go to that shrine, and that's where you do your practice to kind of connect to this sense that there's support and possibility. But I know a lot of people, I got to go to Japan earlier this year. I'd never been. And many people come back from Japan and just want to talk about Jizō all the time. And I'm one of them. So, many, many temples will have some Jizō shrines in them. There are roadside shrines to Jizō all over the place. You're just like going down the road, you'll see a bunch of Jizōs. You'll see them, like there'll be a house and it'll just have like a little alcove on the side of the house, Jizō in it. Cemeteries usually have quite a few Jizōs. Jizō is associated, I don't know, this is a really thing I've really noticed. I'll be like, oh, I'm gonna research Vajrasattva Buddha in the, or Bodhisattva in the Tibetan tradition. And I'm just making this up. It'll be like, Vajrasattva is associated with compassion, giving, dogs, well-being, the future, the past, also, the number of associations that will proliferate around a bodhisattva get kind of amazing. This is somewhat true. There's a connection with Jizō, but it is like, wow, this ended up being a lot of people, travelers. So that's why you see so many roadside shrines. Jizō is kind of a patron for those who have died, for mothers, for children. In particular, in Japan, Jizō is closely associated with mothers who have died in childbirth, children who have died prior to childbirth, either from miscarriage or abortion, children who have died near the time of childbirth. And this is actually not an uncommon phenomenon. I think we all know. But in Japan, there is symbolism in every city. You frequently see images reminding you of, in particular, death around the time of childbirth and childbearing. Also, illness for children. Illness for children. So I was reading this book by Tangen Harada Roshi. And this, I think it should give you like a window into maybe something about the Japanese, some cultural Japanese ideas about Jizō. He wrote, I came into this world with a great debt. My mother gave her own life in order to give birth to me. She already had 3 children, and when she was pregnant with me, she was diagnosed with stomach cancer. The doctor urged her to apologize to the baby, to end the pregnancy, and to have the cancer removed from her stomach. Those around her, my father as well, tried to persuade her to do it, but she would not, vowing, this baby is in my belly is going to be born. I was born on August 24th, which is the day we worship Jizō Bodhisattva. After that, it was too late for surgery. Just before she died, she very clearly expressed herself to those close to her. Even after I die, I will care for and protect this child. She must have prayed fiercely for my protection. She died before my first birthday and left me in the care of Jizō Bodhisattva. Tongan Harada Roshi story continues to be pretty extraordinary. But this, you know, in the book, he's really talking about his sense of like why he feels called to live a life of service to Buddhism. So just going back to this idea that the word garba means both womb and embryo, you know, Ksiti garba or Tathagata garba, the womb of the Buddha, the embryo of the Buddha, this inseparability between that which makes something and that which is made. This is the basic idea of karma in Buddhism. Like the thing you do is not only what you do, but it's also what will make the world we live in. Both. Dogen Zenji at one point wrote, when you give birth to a child, you don't just become a mother, you also become a child. I saw someone be like, what? Are you saying the point is what you create is actually you also as well. Everything, every seed you plant, every beautiful thing you make, every unkind thing you do, it's both you and what makes your life and also what goes into the world, and it has its own life. And oh, I forgot to mention this. There's actually a ritual called the Mizuko Kuyo, which is done in a number of different kinds of Buddhist temples, which means water baby offering. And those are rituals that are to sort of commemorate and honor children who have been lost prior to and during childbirth. And I believe Judith Regier did one just a year or two ago here in the Twin Cities. Judith Regier, who is trained here and is a longtime guiding teacher of Clouds and Water Zen Center, and a wonderful and revered Buddhist teacher in town. So the depictions of Jizō are actually really important. A lot of people don't, that I encountered, like in Japan, people that talk about what Jizō represented. They just took care of the Jizō image, or you just visit the Jizō image. So the practice of just approaching a ritual object as a way that can represent and heal and remind you and inspire you is really fundamental to Buddhist practice for most people. You may be like, yeah, whatever. But I can tell you, I think I bowed to this altar 30 times yesterday with my head on the floor. Not that I counted. And that was just yesterday. So this is something we do, or some of us do, something people do. So in early images of Jizō Bodhisattva, it looks like you might might call a classical Indian image of a bodhisattva. You can come on in and sit down. You know, okay. So anyway, just I don't have any images of that, but this is kind of a fairly Indian-looking image, although it's Chinese. But over time, as Kshitigarbha moved into East Asia, it started to be represented just as like a monk with kind of plain monk's robes. The symbolism, there's less ornate imagery on it. They start to get pretty simple looking. And, you can kind of see what this might represent, right? If you read Indian sutras, bodhisattvas are like these unbelievably powerful, world-transcending beings, might show up and just do something utterly heroic as a human being, but most of the time are just flying through space and stuff. And in East Asia, they start to be like, well, what if it's just like people? This is the kind of the origin and the beginning of how it's common in a Zen culture for me to just say, you are bodhisattvas. Like I think in India, 2,000 years ago, they'd be like, really? Can you fly? This is collapsing. Is it the womb or is it the embryo? Is Jizō outside of you or are you Jizō? Is hell somewhere else or is it part of the community we live in? So, Then in Japan, because Jizō, and I don't know exactly how this happens, culture is a great mystery, and I can only read so many academic texts. You start to see Jizō start to look like a little kid. So I think maybe now I will show images of Jizō. So because Jizō is associated with children, so then Jizō looks like a child, but then it's like, is this like a really powerful Bodhisattva that protects children, or is it just a little kid that you make nice clothes for? Because all over Japan, the Jizō statues have hand-sewed, handmade clothing or particular images. People, you can see people who've lost children will give items that belong to that child to a Bodhisattva image and leave it there on the altar. So I brought pictures. So I don't know if you all can see this. It's a little hard to see, I know, but I'm trying. Anyway, these are like very more classical Indian images. And then down here you have these little tiny guys with red hats. They're very cute. You kind of want to cuddle them. I'm going to send these Jizos around. And, you know, people make these, maybe I'll send them all around at once. Why don't you just wait a minute? I'll hand these all to you in a minute. People will give very personal items to Jizos. These ones here have jackets that were clearly the jackets of actual children. I saw some with like little sunglasses or particular toys. So people who are memorializing their children will give Jizō the things that their children had. Let me just pass this down and look at these all at once. This is not that clear. What I don't have is a good image. Many Jizos just look like a rock, just a cylindrical rock, and then it'll have like a little hand-sewn bib. I don't know why the bibs. Oh, I know. So a hand-sewn bib, or sometimes a bonnet, or both, or some other things. But the bib is the very standard thing. But you won't even have an image that looks like a carved or created statue. It's just like a rock that's kind of cylindrical that has a bib on it. Or sometimes they're a little bit more pointed or vaguely human shaped. These are a little closer. All the images I'm showing you are not from some great Jizō pilgrimage I went on. I was in Japan on a big pilgrimage. And on my last day, I had an hour and a half from between hotel time and going to the airport. And I went for a walk. And these are things I happened to see on my walk. People really like Jizō. This particular temple probably had 500 Jizos. They receded beyond the limits of the horizon of seeing. So you can send those around. Thank you very much. So they're cute. I'm telling you, it's really cute. People make the ritual space they need. This is pretty cool. It's like, you know, there's a lot of documentation to this. Early Buddhism was extremely patriarchal, and actually Buddhism tends to be very patriarchal still, but the figures, all the, you know, the big iconic figures tended to be male. And then it's like the greatest Bodhisattva of them all, Avalokiteshvara, became female. It became female because people made it female, because we make the world that we want to live in. And people said, we need to see this. That's kind of Kuan Yin Bodhisattva. So, you know, people make the ritual space they need. So I remember the day after George Floyd was murdered, you know, maybe it was 2 days, you know, people started to realize what had happened and the horror of it. And so, as I had been doing for years, when there started to be Black Lives Matter actions, I just put on my robe and went to where things were happening to there and bear witness. And I was really struck because at the 3rd precinct, there was a lot of rage, which you probably know. I mean, it was burned down 4 days later. There was a lot of rage. There were rubber bullets being fired at the people and big barriers being built and stuff like that. But at what we call George Floyd Square now, there was profound solemnity, reverence, a sense of the sacredness of this place that people needed to try and understand what was happening right away. Right away. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to go over there. I know someone who has business there, and I went in. Wing Huey, I don't know if you know Wing Huey, great photographer. And he was like, what should I do here? Are people going to get really mad and, break stuff? I want to do something respectful. No, I was like, I think I'm just going to put all these pictures of the community that I take in the window. That worked out. He still lives there. Anyway, right on that corner. Yeah, people were making beauty. They were bringing flowers. They were creating images. They were creating rituals together. They're still doing it. In fact, I would say we're still doing it, because every Tuesday until September 17th, I and many other people are gathering in George Floyd Square to practice meditation and understand how we can develop a meditation practice in the context of social transformation. So come on by. All you gotta do is drop in. 11:30 Tuesday morning. It's been really beautiful, and this came to me because I had the Dharma talk all done, and it was just last night. I was like, oh, I just remember sitting in the circle with all the people last Tuesday and being like, so much energy has been put into making this a ritual space for healing, transformation, for reparation, for honesty. Powerful. Powerful things that communities can do. Okay, so one more thing, which is, so I went to Japan for this pilgrimage, which I'm not talking about much at all, but I also went on vacation with my spouse. And my spouse is not Buddhist at all. She's not a Zen practitioner. She's not Buddhist. And she came home and she said, I need to turn the sculptures in our front yard into Jizōs because they're Jizōs. She knew that what you turn something into and what it already is are already one. The separation is not what you think it is. This is the most Buddhist thing she's ever done, except for being very compassionate and being relentless in her pursuit of justice. But so we have these little sculptures in my front yard, which were cast by my mother. They're cast iron, and they just look like little cylindrical blobs. And she said, they're clearly Jizōs. They just need, they're very heavy. They just need an apron, and they'll be Jizō. And Colleen's good at sewing. And so I'm not going to pass this around because I don't want to injure anyone. But you can check it out later. I was like, well, my mom made those sculptures. So, we really shouldn't repurpose them without talking to her. She made them in the 70s when she does not cast metal anymore. She was only casting metal in the 70s. But anyway, one of my earliest memories is when I was 6 years old, seeing my mother cry and be really kind of like, whoa, what's going on? And that's when she told me that I had a 2-year-old brother, a brother 2 years older than me, named Jonathan, who died when he was 4 days old. We have Jizō Bodhisattva in our name. I called my mom and I told her what Jizō Bodhisattva represents and that we wanted to turn these sculptures into Jizō. And she said, oh, they were Jizōs all along. So if you want to come visit Jizō, just come by our house, 30-second Colfax. Well, maybe not, it might be weird. It's Jizō all along. So Jizō is there to take care of you. And all the capacity that Jizōs have are inherent in you. Buddha nature, earth nature, The womb and the embryo of the earth and the womb and the embryo of Buddha are you. Not something that you have, can control. Merely you because you're not separate from you. All right, well, thank you all. So we have a few minutes where people can bring their voices. Yeah, questions or brief reflections. It's nice to have reflections be brief because we have a big group. Nick, please do.
Hi, Ben. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, just speak loudly, please. Yeah.
All right, you got it. So you were talking about knowing when to go to hell and start facing just kind of those moments and doing it when you have the capacity to. Immediately I thought, well, especially in my case, being a student for paramedic, it's like sometimes I have shifts or go to calls and people are in their own hell realm, and I don't have sometimes there's not the capacity to fully take care of them in all certain ways. So whether it be in that case or just for ourselves, when you don't necessarily have a choice in facing the hell realm and you don't have the capacity for it, like how do you be present with it? Because it's, in my eyes, it's difficult.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. And I know many people who trained as first responders, and the lack of support for the trauma that first responders encounters, it's really, really sad. And so I appreciate that you're doing that work, and also that you're thinking about how to take care of that broader picture. So I'll just say, maybe practically speaking, there's a lot of practices within our tradition for developing stability. And so sometimes developing stability is different than developing presence to suffering. So that is to say, it may just be a matter of like, this situation is chaotic. I've got to, do the medical interventions that I need to do here. And if I have anything left, it's just trying to take some deep breaths and keep grounded on the earth. And that's going to be as good as I can do. So wishing you well.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I noticed all the Jizos wear red. Is there any significance to the color red in this case?
I think so, but I really don't know what it is. I mean, red often has a very auspicious, positive tone in East Asian cultures. And so people will say, oh, it represents this, it represents that. There'll be a lot of representations, but why particular Jizō? I don't know. If someone else does, feel free to share.
I'll say that in Shinto, red is the color of purity. And so it seems fitting that children Jizos would be covered in purity.
I would say, my experience, that the only actually see red wearing red are children.
Thank you. Children actually wear red, kind of like Jizōs. Yeah, go ahead.
Something for the first responder, bless you, man. You can guard your energy by being compassionate but not empathetic. Compassion, not empathy, and focus on the color blue that will help calm. Got a family in a similar situation. Anyway, my question is, so what, like for families who lost somebody who's like maybe older than like a baby or infant, when does it stop applying? Like, for example, like maybe like somebody who died at 24.
Yeah, well, from my perspective, if it's meaningful to you, it applies. Okay. The whole idea is to just find, I'm talking about this, so some people may be like, this is meaningful to me. I can bring this into my life. So, if you feel a connection to this, it applies. How different people would think about that, who are more involved in the culture of Jizō, I don't really know. But yeah, the main point here is to look for different ways to find the support we need and to find the inspiration we need to be that support. And so, yeah, thank you. Other folks? Go ahead.
So one of my favorite sculptures at the Atlas Institute of Arts is a Jizō. And it's completely different from the ones, you know, that you normally see, which look like folk art, kind of childlike and very humble. This one's really tall and slender, very intricately carved, lots of detail. It's very graceful and elegant. And I like that there are so many different portrayals of Jizō, because it's, to me, that says Jizō will take whatever form is necessary to enter whatever form it's going to do.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, and just in this building, the Jizōs we have are quite distinct. The one on the altar by the bathroom is quite kind of classical looking. And the one on the altar in the third floor is just like a rock with some striations on it. So thank you for that. Any form? Yeah, you think you have a form. But you can take a lot of forms. Other folks? Go ahead.
Sometimes people don't actually want to leave the hell around. They are identified with it and they attach to it or familiar. How would you working?
Yeah, I mean, really, from the Buddhist perspective, the question was like, if people seem to be attached to the hell room or want to stay there, what do you do? That's actually the norm. Most of us, whether we know it or not, are stuck in our habits. We don't even know their habits. Which is why Zazen is really annoying. Like, oh my gosh, where did all this stuff come from? You start to see, right? So, you know, that our body of teaching really is, that's the norm. You may not have any hope that you could get out. Even if you have a little hope, you may not have any sense of agency and the ability to do anything about it. You may feel so identified with it that it's like you're just in these loops that pin you there. Yeah, so what do? Jizō is mostly just showing up for people, you know. Certainly, it can be really powerful to just be like, I'm just sitting here where it is really terrible. And that's actually what I was focusing on in the meditation. It wasn't like, go to where the suffering is and figure out what to do. It was like, see if you can even imagine having the stability of Zazen and being there where the suffering is, which isn't like the whole story, but it's so rare that we emphasize it an enormous amount. Certainly, sometimes it's like, yes, it's not worth my time to be with this particular person or in this context where I don't see change as possible. So you can be boundaried about that. But what generally isn't all that effective is to go and explain to people how they should just get, you know. It's just my experience, that's not usually a big winner. It can, you know, in the right moment. You know, I have had, you know, an intervention where family and friends came and were like, please go to rehab. And I thought they were a bunch of jerks. I am alive, so I'm pretty grateful, That was the precise right moment and done well. Most of the time, I'm just grateful they were willing to stay with me. Just keep loving me. And I'm not alone. So thank you all very much for your attention and for your reflections. And I'm going to turn it over to our esteemed donor.